The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly as the steady rhythm of machines pulsed in the silence. Elena's breath fogged the edge of her face shield while her gloved hand hovered over the life support panel. Monitors blinked steadily, casting a cold blue hue across Michael's pale, still face. In the corner of the room, a single chair held Lily, Michael's daughter, her hands clenched, knuckles white. Outside the glass panel, two doctors observed silently, their faces unreadable. The atmosphere was still, weighted with unbearable tension, as if the air itself refused to move. Every second stretched into eternity. Elena's thumb inched toward the switch. Then came the faintest sound, a whisper. Her eyes widened. She looked back at Michael. Had he just moved? No one else reacted. Was it her mind playing tricks? But the whisper came again, unmistakable. Elena stepped back, heart pounding as monitors began to beep erratically. Elena stood frozen, her pulse thudding in her ears louder than any machine. "Michael," she whispered into the dim room, her voice unsteady, eyes locked on the patient's face. But he didn't move again. The whisper seemed to vanish as quickly as it came. Lily stood abruptly from her chair, rushing toward the bed, her voice cracking as she said, "What happened?" Elena held up a trembling hand, unsure whether to speak the truth. The two doctors rushed in now, startled by the rising beeps. One of them barked, "What did you do?" But Elena couldn't look away from Michael. His eyelids fluttered faintly. Or was it her hope deceiving her? "He spoke," she said quietly. Everyone fell silent. "He spoke," she repeated louder. The doctors exchanged glances. One of them moved closer, flashlight in hand, scanning Michael's pupils. Elena backed away, her mind racing. Had she just imagined it? Or had Michael just broken through the silence of death? Michael's vitals continued their soft, unsteady pattern, small spikes on the monitor, drawing new eyes and whispered debates among the staff. Elena leaned closer, watching his chest with near-obsessive focus. Lily clutched her father's hand, her tears falling onto his wrist. "Daddy, I'm here," she whispered. A sudden twitch in his fingers made her gasp. He moved," she cried. One of the doctors stepped forward, taking her gently by the shoulders. "It's likely a reflex," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Elena kept watching, unwilling to dismiss it. The whisper still echoed in her ears, not imagined, not dreamed. "He's aware," Elena muttered. "Some part of him is trying to fight." A silence fell again. Michael's finger moved once more. This time, the movement was deliberate. In the hallway just outside the ICU, the doctors whispered furiously, voices tight with confusion. "He was brain dead," one hissed. The tests were clear. Elena leaned against the wall, her breath shallow. Lily came out behind her, eyes pleading. "Please," she said, "you have to believe what we saw." But the lead physician shook his head. "We cannot declare consciousness based on wishful thinking." Elena turned to face him. "I heard him," she said firmly. He whispered. The doctor's eyes narrowed. "Then he'll whisper again," he said coldly. He turned and walked away. Elena and Lily were left in the silent corridor, uncertain but unwilling to let go of what they knew had happened. Elena sat alone in the break room, her hands trembling around a half-empty cup of coffee. The events of the last hour looped endlessly in her mind. The whisper, the movement, the beeping monitors, none of it aligned with the clinical diagnosis. She knew what she had heard. She had to trust her instincts, even if no one else did. Her eyes drifted to a photo pinned on the staff corkboard, a picture of the ICU team from 2 years ago. Michael was in it, standing tall, smiling. He wasn't just a patient. He had been one of them, a former paramedic turned whistleblower, now lying in silence. She set the cup down. If Michael was trying to speak, it meant one thing. He wasn't done yet. The morning sunlight spilled across the edge of the ICU window, warming the sterile chill that clung to the room overnight. Elena sat at her desk, reviewing Michael's chart for the 100th time, eyes scanning the neurological assessment with increasing doubt. Nothing about the reflexes matched what she'd witnessed. She clicked through archived scans, her lips pressing tight. Lily entered, her voice low but urgent. "I talked to a neurologist in Boston," she said. "He's flying in tomorrow." Elena hesitated. "That could cost your family a lot." Lily shook her head. "My father is worth it." Elena glanced back at the scan. "Then we fight," she said. For the first time, a fragile alliance formed, not of hope, but of refusal to accept the silence. Outside, the monitor emitted a faint pulse. It wasn't over. Later that day, Elena found herself in the staff conference room facing Dr. Reynolds, the hospital's chief of medicine. He reviewed her incident report in silence, expression carved from stone. "Your claim suggests auditory response from a declared brain-dead patient," he said finally. Elena held his stare. "Yes, twice, and movement." He sighed, rubbing his temple. "Do you realize the liability of what you're implying?" Elena nodded. "That's why I documented everything." She slid a file across the table. Time-stamped vitals, nurse notes, even a written statement from Lily. "Dr. Reynolds didn't touch it. If you're wrong, your license could be suspended. Your future." Elena interrupted. "I'd rather lose my job than ignore a life." For a moment, his eyes betrayed doubt. Then they turned cold again. "This meeting is over." That evening, Elena entered Michael's room quietly, her shift long over. The hallway had grown quiet, the bustling energy of the hospital reduced to murmurs and machines. She stood by his side, watching his chest rise and fall, slow but steady. "I don't know what you're trying to tell us," she whispered, "but I believe you." She gently adjusted his pillow, brushing a strand of gray hair from his forehead. "They won't listen, but I will." She sat down, notebook in hand, and began logging every movement, every sound, no matter how small. The machines hummed beside her. A nurse passed outside, but didn't enter. In that moment, it wasn't duty or science that guided her. It was something quieter and deeper. Loyalty. Die. Conscience. Connection. Die. Elena would stay until something shifted, or someone listened. In a secluded hospital lounge, Lily made a video call to Dr. Hammond, the neurologist from Boston. The screen flickered briefly before a silver-haired man in a white shirt appeared. "Tell me exactly what you saw," he said. Lily described the whisper, the finger movement, and the doctor's dismissal. Hammond leaned forward. "What you're describing may fall under cognitive motor dissociation. Rare, but real, especially after trauma." Her eyes widened. "So he could be aware?" "It's possible," he replied. "I'll need a full neurological panel and quiet time alone with him when I arrive." Lily thanked him, heart pounding. She ended the call and stared at her reflection in the darkened screen. For the first time in days, she didn't feel crazy. She felt ready. The fight for her father's truth was only beginning. Hours later, as the hospital settled into its midnight rhythm, Michael stirred. It wasn't much, a twitch in his eyelid, a slight shift of his fingers, almost imperceptible. But the machines registered it. Elena, still sitting nearby, perked up. She leaned close. "Michael," she whispered. The response came slowly, a faint groan beneath the mask. Her heart raced. "Do it again," she said softly. The monitor beeped irregularly. A second groan. "You're in there, aren't you?" she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. Michael's fingers curled ever so slightly toward hers, resting on the bedrail. A sound escaped him, guttural, unsure, but human. Elena gripped his hand. "We heard you," she whispered. Outside the room, unnoticed, one of the hospital's security cameras silently recorded everything. The next morning began with subtle chaos. Nurses whispered. Doctors huddled outside a key room full. Word had spread. Michael had made noise, moved, reacted. But no one wanted to document it officially. Elena reviewed the overnight footage from the security camera, her hands trembling as she paused at the moment his fingers curled. She transferred the clip to a private drive. "If they erase this, we're done," she muttered. Lily arrived moments later, breathless. "He did it again." Elena nodded. "And I've got it on video." Just as they spoke, a hospital administrator appeared. "You're being reassigned, Nurse Elena. Effective immediately." She froze. "For what reason?" "Protocol deviation," the man said curtly. Elena's badge was taken. As she turned to leave, she slipped the drive into Lily's hand and whispered, "Don't stop." In a small cafe across the street from the hospital, Elena and Lily sat in a booth by the window, the tension between them palpable. "They're trying to shut it down," Elena said, staring at her untouched coffee. Lily plugged the drive into her laptop. The clip played, Michael's slight groan, the finger movement, Elena's whisper. The evidence was there. "This proves he's not gone," Lily said firmly. Elena nodded, eyes glassy. "But it won't matter unless someone with authority sees it." Lily looked up. "Dr. Hammond arrives in 3 hours." They sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what they held. Elena whispered, "This isn't just medical. Someone's trying to hide something bigger." Lily's jaw tightened. "Then we expose them." Outside, the hospital loomed under gray skies. Back inside the hospital, a janitor's cart rolled silently past the nurse's station. Inside a supply closet, Elena used her backup credentials to access locked patient files. She flipped through Michael's digital logs, stopping at an entry dated 3 days before the accident. "Incident report. Unauthorized patient file copied." The signature was blurred out, but the access code wasn't. She took a photo. Another entry mentioned pre-transfer suppression protocol. Her eyes narrowed. She printed it quickly and tucked it into her coat. Footsteps approached. Elena slipped out just as a senior nurse turned the corner. Heart racing, she ducked into a stairwell. What Michael knew wasn't just medical, it was institutional. And someone inside had made sure he wouldn't speak. Dr. Hammond finally arrived. He was calm, collected, and carried the weight of decades in his briefcase. After greeting Lily and Elena in a side room, he reviewed the footage. His expression changed slightly with each second. "There's something here," he admitted. "It's rare, but I've seen this before." He prepared his equipment. "I'll need 30 minutes alone with the patient." They escorted him to Michael's room. Cameras off. Lights dim. Elena stood outside the door, waiting like a mother outside a locked courtroom. Time stretched. At last, Hammond emerged. His eyes met theirs. "He's aware," he said. "In fragments. But it's there." Lily gasped. Elena clutched the wall. "I'll prepare a formal report, but be warned. Someone will try to stop this from going public." That evening, Elena opened her mailbox at home to find a plain white envelope. Inside was a printed still of Michael's medical chart, with a large red delete stamp across the date of his incident. No name, no return address. Just a warning. She stared at it, heart pounding. Across town, Lily's apartment lost power. A knock at her door followed. When she peered through the peephole, no one was there, only an envelope on the floor with a single phrase, "Stop digging." The fear became real. This was no longer about a misdiagnosis. It was a cover-up. And now, they were targets. Elena sat down in her dim living room and picked up her phone. "We release the footage tonight," she texted Lily. No more waiting. By morning, the video was everywhere. A clip leaked anonymously showed Michael's groan and finger twitch, followed by Elena's stunned voice whispering, "He spoke." Within hours, it trended online. Comments flooded in, from disbelief to outrage. News vans gathered outside the hospital. Reporters clashed with security. Inside, the hospital board called an emergency meeting. Elena was summoned but denied entry. Lily watched it all unfold from a distance, gripping her phone as anchors repeated her father's name. Dr. Hammond texted one word, "Careful." That same afternoon, a lawyer representing the hospital arrived at Elena's apartment. "Seize all communication with media," he said, handing her a thick envelope. She didn't open it. "I can't stay quiet," she answered. The lawyer frowned. "Then prepare for consequences." In the hospital's records archive, hidden behind double-locked glass, Lily and Elena used Elena's remaining badge access to search for Michael's personnel files. "He reported something," Elena whispered, scanning the folders. "Something they buried." Lily opened one drawer, marked Incidents, Internal. Inside were red-tagged files, many incomplete. But one caught her attention. A report Michael filed 2 months before his accident. A patient death, irregular dosage, cover-up suspected. "He knew," Lily said, hands shaking. "He knew, and they tried to shut him up." Elena took out her phone to photograph the report. A sensor beeped above. "Motion detection." "No." They froze. "We need to go," Elena said, grabbing the file. They exited into the stairwell, unaware that someone was already watching from the other end of the hallway. Dr. Hammond received the file Lily emailed late that night. He read every line in silence, his glasses sliding slightly down his nose. In the final section, a handwritten note from Michael read, "They know I found the second dosage log. If anything happens to me, check the IQ vault key." Hammond immediately called Elena. "Where is the ICU vault?" he asked. Elena responded slowly. "Behind the old oxygen station on level B. It hasn't been used in years." Minutes later, Hammond was inside the abandoned section. He opened a rusted utility box and found a labeled plastic bag containing a second dosage log. It confirmed illegal alterations to patient medication levels. He photographed everything and sent it encrypted to a trusted contact. "Now we have them," he whispered. Back upstairs, Michael's monitor suddenly spiked. Elena rushed into the room as his heartbeat climbed. "Michael?" she said, voice trembling. His eyelids fluttered. Lily ran in behind her, grabbing his hand. "Dad, we're here. You're safe." Michael's lips moved again, but no sound came. Elena leaned in. This time she could make out words. "They lied." Michael opened his eyes briefly. Lily sobbed. "We know. We found everything." The room filled with urgency as staff attempted to contain the monitor alarms. One nurse was already on the phone. "Code yellow. Get the board down here." Elena stood between them and Michael. "And he's not going anywhere." It was no longer about medical protocol. It was about silencing a witness. And they weren't going to let that happen. The board arrived within minutes. Dr. Reynolds pushed through the chaos, flanked by security. "He's conscious," he barked. "Impossible." Dr. Hammond stepped into the room. "Not impossible. Documented." He handed over printed logs, reports, and the hidden file. Reynolds turned pale. "Where did you get this?" Hammond replied coolly, "The place you thought no one would look." The room fell into stunned silence. Reynolds turned to leave, but was blocked by 2 investigators. "Sir, we need you to come with us." Cameras flashed through the hallway glass. Outside, media waited. Elena exhaled. Lily clutched her father's hand. Michael blinked slowly, and a weak smile formed. Truth had a pulse now, and it was louder than anyone expected. After the confrontation, Michael was transferred to a secure recovery unit under federal watch. Elena and Lily visited him daily. Though still weak, his eyes now followed them with clear recognition. He couldn't speak yet, but his hand movements and eye blinks formed a primitive form of communication. A specialist brought in a simple code board, letters, yes, no, and basic emotions. Slowly, Michael spelled. "Safe?" Lily nodded. "You're safe now." He blinked once. Elena leaned in. "Do you remember what happened?" He pointed toward the emotion column and stopped at fear. Lily swallowed. "They tried to stop you because of what you knew?" He blinked again. The silence said everything. And now, the world would know. Meanwhile, media outlets exploded with coverage. News anchors dissected the whistleblower angle, showing clips of Michael's improvement and the evidence from the ICU vault. A public protest formed outside the hospital gates, patients, nurses, and families demanding reform. Inside, the administration scrambled. Multiple resignations were filed, including Dr. Reynolds. At a press conference, the hospital CEO read a short statement: "We failed. We will cooperate fully with investigators." Cameras flashed. Elena and Lily watched the live feed from Michael's room. "It's happening," Lily said, stunned. Elena nodded, her hand trembling around her cup. "It started with a whisper, and now it's a roar." Michael blinked twice, his faint smile barely visible, but it was there. Late that night, Lily sat beside Michael alone. The hospital quieted around them. She held his hand gently and whispered, "I thought I lost you forever." His fingers moved, spelling, "never." She smiled through tears. "I want to ask something. Was it really worth it?" Michael's eyes welled slightly. He blinked once. "Yes. You were right to speak up," she said. "And now, everyone knows." Michael blinked again. Lily leaned in, placing her forehead against his. "I'm proud to be your daughter." Outside, the stars shimmered against the glass. Inside, a father and daughter shared a quiet moment, stronger than any courtroom, louder than any protest. It was the moment the silence finally broke for good. In the following days, government officials launched a full investigation into hospital malpractice. Dr. Hammond served as lead consultant, offering testimony and presenting Michael's notes, video logs, and the recovered dosage file. Elena submitted her full report, backed by years of experience. "I heard him," she said, "and I'll never unhear that moment." The hearing chamber remained silent as her words echoed. Journalists scribbled. The lead investigator nodded slowly. "This isn't just about medicine," he said. "It's about ethics, truth, and listening when no one else will." Cameras rolled. Behind the screen, Michael watched from his bed. One tear rolled down his cheek. For the first time since the accident, it landed not in despair, but in peace. A week later, Michael was discharged. Elena and Lily wheeled him out beneath a pale winter sun, where reporters stood silently, no microphones, no noise, just respect. A news headline scrolled silently on the hospital marquee: "Whistleblower survives. Truth wins." Michael looked around, breathing fresh air for the first time in months. Elena placed her hand on his shoulder. "You gave the voiceless a voice," she said. Lily added, "And we won't let it fade." He blinked slowly, a gentle smile forming. The camera shutters clicked, but no one rushed forward. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a legacy. The beginning of a louder kind of silence, one the world would never ignore again. 2 weeks later, Michael sat by his apartment window, blanketed in late afternoon sun. Rehabilitation had begun. Physical therapists visited daily. Progress was slow but undeniable. He could lift his arm now, murmur single words, and respond with clarity. Elena arrived with a manila folder in hand. "This came from the Justice Department," she said, placing it on his lap. Inside were official statements. The hospital executives were indicted, reforms passed, funding allocated to a new national patient rights initiative. "You did this," Elena said softly. Michael stared at the documents, a small breath escaping his lips. "Together," he rasped. They sat in silence, staring out the window where children played in the street. Noise, life, and second chances. Lily met with a local nonprofit to discuss forming a new foundation. In a modest community center filled with folding chairs and corkboards, she presented her vision. "It's called the Silent Voice Initiative," she said. "Dedicated to patients who can't speak, but are still very much alive." The room applauded. Volunteers approached, offering support, resources, connections. A reporter snapped a photo. "This story changed people," the coordinator said. "But more importantly, you're helping others write their own." Lily smiled, humbled. She thought of her father, silent but listening, struggling but present. A voice lost had become a voice shared. And now, it would echo in others. That evening, Elena returned home to find a letter taped to her door. Handwritten, no signature. It read, "You were right. I couldn't stay silent either. Thank you for what you did. You saved more than just one life." She turned it over. No return address. Inside, a small USB drive. She plugged it into her laptop. It contained internal memos, falsified records, audio clips, more proof of what Michael had uncovered. Her heart raced. This wasn't just validation. It was a second chapter. She forwarded everything to the investigators. The truth hadn't finished speaking. It was just getting louder, passed from one brave whisper to another. Michael's speech therapy continued. With effort, he now formed full sentences. One morning as Lily helped him through vowel sounds, he suddenly stopped and whispered, "I thought I'd die with the truth." She froze. "But you didn't." He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "And now? They can't hide it anymore." They sat together, sunlight draping across the dining table. Lily placed a hand over his. "You lived, Dad. You lived for all the others who couldn't speak." Tears welled in his eyes. His voice was weak but steady. "Then I'll keep speaking until they listen." That day, he asked for a notebook. With shaking hands, he began to write. At a national healthcare summit 6 months later, Michael, supported by Elena and Lily, took the stage in front of hundreds. A hush fell over the crowd as he adjusted the microphone. 6 months ago, he began slowly, "They tried to silence me, but you're here. So I'm louder than ever." Applause erupted. He shared his story. The accident, the silence, the whisper, and the voices who stood for him when he couldn't. He ended with a line that would echo far beyond the conference. "Never assume silence means surrender." The room stood in ovation. Elena wiped her eyes. Lily stood beside her father, beaming. What began in a dim IQ room now filled a hall with thunderous truth. Months passed. Autumn leaves began to fall outside Michael's home. Recovery was no longer the focus, rebuilding was. He sat in his study with framed newspaper articles on the wall, headlines reading "Whistleblower Hero" and "The ICU That Spoke." He sifted through letters from patients and families who had found strength through his story. Some were handwritten, some typed. Each one carried the same sentiment: "You helped me believe." He turned to Lily, who was organizing more envelopes. "All this, from one whisper," he said softly. She smiled. One whisper that was finally heard. He leaned back in his chair. The silence that once symbolized death now felt like peace. A silence earned. A silence honored. Elena returned to nursing, but in a new role, training future caregivers on ethical accountability and patient advocacy. In a bright classroom she stood at the front, a slide behind her reading. "The Patient Who Whispered." Students listened with wide eyes as she recounted what it meant to truly listen. "Sometimes," she said, "the most important voice in the room isn't the loudest, it's the one you almost missed." A hand rose from the back. "How did you know it was real?" Elena paused. "Because it felt human," she said. "And that's our first duty, to protect what's human even when it's fragile." Applause followed. In their eyes, she saw not just students, but future defenders of the unheard. One evening, Michael received a call from a woman whose son had just awakened from a coma. "Your story gave me the strength to wait," she said through tears. Michael said little, but his eyes filled. After she hung up, he sat quietly in his living room. Outside, wind stirred the autumn leaves. Lily entered, holding a small plaque. "The mayor's office wants to dedicate the new rehab wing in your name," she said. Michael shook his head, smiling. "Let it be for all of them, not just me." Lily nodded. The plaque read, "For those who fought to be heard." Michael ran his fingers over the engraved words. It was never just about survival. it was about voice. In a special television interview, Michael appeared on screen for the first time. Seated beside Elena and Lily, he spoke slowly but clearly. "There are thousands like me," he said. "In beds, in silence, waiting for someone to believe." The host nodded, visibly moved. "What would you tell the one still waiting?" Michael paused, choosing his words with care. "Hold on. And if you can't speak, someone will speak for you." The camera zoomed in as Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. The broadcast aired nationwide. Social media lit up with stories from caregivers and patients. For a moment, an entire nation leaned in, not to noise, but to the power of quiet truth. That night, Michael stood alone on his back porch. The wind was calm, stars flickered overhead. He looked up, breathing deeply, feeling the crisp air move through lungs that once nearly stopped. Behind him, the house was filled with warmth, laughter, conversation, life. He closed his eyes. In the silence there was no fear now. Only presence. Only gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, "to the world, to the silence, to the people who refused to let him disappear." He turned back toward the door. Just before he stepped inside, he stopped. A soft smile curved his lips as he whispered again, "I'm still here." And then he walked back into the light.